All right.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to our summer virtual series. My name is Tara Stevenson. I serve as the Vice President of Student Affairs here at Flagler College, and we are in our third one for the summer. I'm going to let our guests introduce themselves in a little bit, but just a couple of housekeeping things that I like to go over at the beginning of every single one. The purpose of tonight's session is to dive a little bit more into some of these topics that our families may or may not be able to make it to an orientation session in person, or they haven't visited campus before. So it's an opportunity for them to hear a little bit more about some of these specialized topics. We are recording these. We are actively working with our Marcom and IT teams to get those recordings up for our families and incoming students. And so keep an eye on the Flagler College YouTube channel. We just got the other two recordings, and so now we need to switch them on over to make them public for everybody. As a reminder, we'll have the Q&A button available, and so if you have any questions for our presenters, please feel free to pop it in there and we will try to get to as many of those as we can. But without further ado, I'm going to let Dr. Keaton and Dr. Thweet introduce themselves to you all, and we're going to dive right into this diving into core session.
Hi, everybody. My name is Dr. Doug Keaton, Doug, and I'm the faculty director of the core curriculum. I've been at Flagler since 2012, so a little while, and I really love it here, and I hope your student will too. And today we're going to talk about our general education system and what makes it special and how to make the best use of it as you journey through your education at Flagler.
So, hi everyone, I'm Dr. Janine Thweet, and I actually work in the Center for Advising and Core Experience. My full title is the Classical and Liberal Education Core Advisor. So I am a little bit of a liaison between first year advising and the core. I also advise incoming students, and I currently advise all incoming first year students with last names starting with S through last names starting with Z.
And you both are faculty as well. What do you teach?
So I'm a professor of philosophy. I I guess if you like specialize, I guess it's like the combination of psychology and philosophy. So I get a lot of fun out of thinking about how our minds work, essentially.
And just because it's really exciting, and maybe you'll talk about it later, but I had a student who was in your class recently. What was the class that you taught this summer?
Oh, so my flagship course, and we'll get to what that means, our
Yeah.
flagship courses in a little bit. My flagship course was about thinking about the philosophical significance of video games and also learning how to make video games, at least the basics of it, learning some programming and 3D modeling and animation and so on. And I hope the students have fun doing it. I certainly have fun teaching it.
Yeah. Got to get that hook so that everybody will want to learn
Yeah,
more about flagship throughout the presentation.
absolutely.
And Janine, what do you teach?
So my academic background is actually philosophy and theology. My area of research is religion and science. So here at Flagler, I've taught intro to philosophy, I've taught world religions, I've taught some upper level philosophy courses, like women in philosophy. And I often teach first year seminar, which is actually my very favorite thing to teach.
And which we'll also talk about a bit here in a little bit.
All right, well, let's jump right on in.
All right, great. So I guess what we'll do is spend, what do y'all think? Something like 30, 40 minutes talking about our general education program here at Flagler College. And I'm going to go ahead and start a PowerPoint just because visuals are nice. And the idea is to introduce you to our general education program. Are we all seeing?
Hmm.
Yeah, good. Excellent. The Flagler College General Education Program. So colleges all have these, right? They have the collection of classes or a collection of choices of classes that they want their students to take in addition to their major, in addition to their minor. So a student might be a business major, but the school also says, we want you to take this history course or these chemistry courses or pick something in addition to the stuff in your major to give you a more well-rounded education while you're at our college or our university. really, really basically, that's kind of how we think of the idea of general education, right? Sometimes it's also thought of as the classes the students don't want to take, but they have to in their first year or two. Um, well, it turns out that some schools uh, spend actually many schools in different ways spend a lot of time thinking about how to be really intentional and to do with that general education program and to actually make it meaningful and hopefully engaging and fun for the student, not just a requirement, but something that actually is of real value and real interest to the student as they complete their college degree. A few years ago, Flagler College decided to do that as well. For the first 50 years of Flagler College's existence, we had a very standard gen ed, what's sometimes called a cafeteria style gen ed, in which students just take a bunch of 101 classes in addition to taking the class in their major. So if a student is majoring, let's say in chemistry, they'd also take history 101, math 101, whatever 101 classes they wanted to give themselves some breadth. And I'll say a bit more about why distribution models are so popular in a second. But Flagler decided, the faculty got together and decided we wanted to do something more interesting than that. And so what we came up with, we called our core program. We launched about 4 years ago, and it's been going really, really well, and we're really proud of it. And we wanted to share it with you in our discussion tonight. So what we're going to do over the next, I don't know, as I say, 40 minutes or so, is talk to you about, first of all, what is meant by general education in the first place. I won't spend too long on this, but it seems like a nice introduction. Like, why do we do general education at all? What's its place in a general college? What's its place in getting a degree? Why does it exist? And then specifically move on to the idea of Flagler's version of this, the Flagler core. Say a bit, in a little bit of detail actually, how it works and why we designed it that way. And then finally, say some things about how to make it work for you as the student, right? We have this thing we created that we want to share with you, but what can you do it to make it yours? What can you do with it to make it yours? And to make sure you're getting the most out of it with your own intention, your own design, right? So first, let's talk about the general idea of general education, this thing that most universities, most colleges have and have had for many, many years, many decades, at least, as we'll see in a moment, since about 1829. Here is, just by way of a little bit of interesting background, here's the first occurrence of the phrase general education in the world. It first happened, as I say, in 1829 at Bowdoin College in Maine, where one of the guys there, A.S. Packard, was describing their system, and he wrote, quote, "Our colleges are designed to give youth a general education, classical, literary, and scientific, as comprehensive as an education can be, with which it is desirable for a youth to have a general acquaintance before directing his attention to a particular course of study." So you see there, even back in 1829, the idea was that there would be a particular course of study. There would be a major. There would be the thing the student is becoming an expert at. But there would also be this broader idea, this idea of becoming a college-educated citizen of the community, which involves a broad grasp of how the world works, a broad range of intellectual skills that allow one to look at, investigate, um, manipulate the world, right? And they wanted all of their students to have that. Flagler, about 7 years ago, got together, the faculty and the staff got together and started to think about if we were really to design like our own ideal version of this, our own package of education that we want all of our students to have, to create what we'll call the meaning specifically of a Flagler education. What would it look like? And the faculty spent a few years, or a couple years, just talking about it, and the staff kind of all coming together, just talking about it. And this went in line with what our college calls our strategic plan. And right at the start of our strategic plan was kind of this guiding light of a quote that President Joyner, who was our president at the time, put at the start of our strategic plan. And it was like, as I say, our North Star in thinking about what we want our Flagler education to look like. I'm going to share that quote with you now. Here it is. This is from a philosopher, yay, philosophers, named Hannah Arendt, who wrote, "Education is where we decide whether we love our children enough not to expel them from our world and leave them to their own devices, nor to strike from their hands their chance of undertaking something new, unforeseen by us, but to prepare them in advance for the task of renewing a common world. So you see there that the idea is not just to teach students the facts that we already know, but to show them how to find new facts that we don't know yet, to find new ways of looking at the world that we can't even imagine, to give them the skills that we've learned and that our parents and our ancestors have learned, to pass it on to them so they can do something new and different with it. That is what it means to care for them. That is what it means to pass the world on to them. And so that kind of, as I say, that quote was the guiding quote for our thought processes over the years we began designing our new core curriculum. Backing up a bit, in general, if you look all across the country, what do people say is the purpose of a general education? Well, if you were to go around to different colleges all around the United States, they would give basically two different answers to that question. What is the purpose of general education? One of them is a social answer, that the reason colleges exist in the first place is because democracies need an educated and free citizenry. And crucially, education is necessary to true freedom of thought, to true freedom of investigation. So this relates to Thomas Jefferson's idea that to have a democracy, you need to have an educated citizenry. So in this way of looking at it, the purpose of general education is actually not so much about the individual, but about the community, about the country, that it's needed for our population so our population can take care of itself properly in a democratic way. The other answer that's very popular is more personal. It's not so much about the community, it's about the student themselves. And that answer is the purpose of general education is to enrich the mind and enable the individual to live well. So that if a student is, let's say, a computer science major, when they graduate, they have more than just a lot of expertise in how to do computer science, but they also understand their human relationship to the world in such a way that they can make the most and the best of their expertise with computers. We might look around the world right now and see that we have lots of people kind of in charge right now who are really good at computers, running our social media and so on, but maybe could use a little dose of the humanities, right? Something like that is what's behind the idea of general education for all of us together. So now, by way of wrapping up this initial section of the talk, let me just introduce some key terms that you'll hear a lot when you hear people talking about general education. One of them is the idea of a liberal arts education. Now, of course, the word liberal sounds a bit like that might start a conversation, but it's not meant like that. It's not meant like an American Democrat versus an American Republican. In this case, liberal means, in the old-fashioned sense, free. So that a liberal arts education is meant to impart time-honored skills of freedom of thought and expression. This idea goes back to the medieval period. It has to do really with liberalis, that is freedom for the individual, again, relating to the idea of a free democracy. So in relationship to that, the idea of general education is a method of imparting a liberal education for all students. That is to say, to have a part of your curriculum, a part of the classes that you teach that are set aside and meant not for the major, but specifically to impart this freedom of thought education to all the students together. And then finally, the idea of a core, which is what we call our system, the core system is one of those general education methods. It's not the only one, as there are two main types of general education methods. So one of them is called the core method. And this method, if a college uses the core method, they emphasize the idea of common classes or common experiences or common themes that the students all engage with together, so that they share something like a philosophy of what it means to be a college-educated person. The alternative method, which I mentioned earlier, is called a cafeteria model or a distribution model, is just to ask students to take a bunch of one-on-one classes and hope they get something out of it. I'm being a little bit simplistic there, but that's generally actually what it is. And it's not that that's an awful way of doing it. It can be a good way of doing it. But Flagler wanted to do something more intentional, and so we adopted this idea of a core system. So having said that, I'll move on to part 2 of our talk. But first, before I do that, Dr. Thweet, did you have any thoughts you wanted to add, or does it seem as though I covered everything?
Oh, I'll jump in, but I think, yeah, you're clicking right along, and let's talk about the Flagler core.
Outstanding. Cool. So now let's move on to talk to Cecilia about our way of doing things, the Flagler core. So Flagler College promises a whole person education. That's a phrase that you'll see some places in our college catalog and our college website. And to us, just to go in a little bit more detail, that means a classical liberal education. Now, we said what liberal arts meant a moment ago. For us, the idea of the classical tradition, in the classical tradition, a complete, well-rounded, self-actualized person who is doing a good job of being a human is a seeker of the true and the good. And now that is a key idea for our core system, that we want to provide an education to our students that helps them to become seekers of what is true and creators of what is good. To put it another way, what we do with our students is pursue truth and goodness amidst the beauty of St. Augustine, right? That's kind of a nice way to bring it all together, to capture the general idea. So the point of the core is to educate each student as a seeker of the true and creator of the good, but, and this is important, to let each student find their own path to this goal, right? So a moment ago, I said that in a core system, the students all take the same classes, have the same themes, and so on. That's actually not quite the way Flagler does it. That is the way some schools do it. Some schools have a very rigid set of, let's say, 6 or 7 classes that all their students are required to take and that embody the philosophy and themes of that college, what they mean by college education. That can be very good because it allows a very great consistency of message. But the downside of that exact way of doing it is that the students, no matter what they're passionate about, no matter what their interests are, have to take the same set of courses. And we shied away from that. We wanted to give our students more freedom. So what we decided to do was develop a system in which there is a kind of theme, philosophy, point, meaning to our education, and thus a set of skills, a set of, let's say, types of general education classes we want our students to take. But we wanted to provide lots of options. And so, like, actually, as you'll see in a moment, our faculty did something that was actually kind of a crazy amount of work. They developed many, many, many classes just specifically for our core system. They're not part of their majors. They're not part of any minors. They're not part of the disciplinary sort of boxes that each of us who are professors went to graduate school in, but are designed specifically for Flagler, specifically for our core system, and designed just for this, right? And we have like nearly 200 of them. And the faculty did that work. I'm very proud of our faculty. They did it fairly quickly, actually, in a space of 2 or 3 years. In fact, a lot of it during COVID. And what we're
It's
left
also
with,
it's also not all past tense. So
yeah,
yes, we developed in the past tense a whole lot of courses, that's true, but faculty are still coming up with new ideas, proposing new courses. We are running new classes every semester in our core program. And one benefit to that you see really clearly in the classroom as a student is that the person in front of you teaching this class is really, really excited about it. It's not just blah, blah 101. I've taught this for 20 years and I'm teaching it the same way as I always have. It is like, no, this is my baby and I am loving this and I am inviting you to have fun with me in this classroom this semester. It's a remarkable difference in, I guess, let's say classroom vibe, right?
yeah, I think, thank you. That's very, very well said. That you're exact, yeah, exactly. If a professor is teaching History 101, that's a class they've been teaching for 20 years, and it's very easy to get kind of tired of it and burnt out on it. But if you're teaching a class like, History Detectives, the Atomic Bomb, which is a class that one of our historians invented just a couple of years ago because they wanted to talk with students about the historical processes that resulted in the atomic bomb. They were really excited about that. And then some students will find that interesting and, ahead of time be interested in taking the course. So you have a classroom of people who are all kind of, let's say, happy to be there. And that is a different vibe than just walking into a regular one-on-one class. And as you say, Dr. Thweet, every year we have new classes like that. And that's part of the exciting idea of the core. So what you see on the screen now is what we call the core chart. And at first, this looks a little bit intimidating and a little bit hard to interpret, but I'm going to explain why it looks this way or rather will explain why it looks this way, and how to make use of it as you map your own journey through the College Core, okay? So if you can see there on the screen, over there on the left, you see what are called literacies, and you can see there are 9 of them. I'll just read them out really quickly. Academic writing, oral communication, natural scientific inquiry, social scientific inquiry, quantitative reasoning, creativity, social and cultural inquiry, historical inquiry, and ethical reasoning. So there's 9 of them. What the faculty decided is that we thought that if we wanted to have a limited, not go on forever, but a limited number of intellectual skills that are really essential to true freedom of thought, that these were the 9 that the faculty came up with. That in life, in real life, if you're confronted with a new situation or a new problem and you have to address it, you have to solve it, here are 9 ways of thinking about the world that can help you to do that. You can think about it historically. You can think about it ethically. You can think about it like a speechwriter. You can think about it like a mathematician, like an artist. These are all different ways of looking at the problem in front of you and thinking about different ways to solve it. A key idea here is if you only have one way of thinking about a problem, for example, your major, and that's all you've got, that cannot be true freedom of thought because you have no choice as to how you think about it. Whereas if you've deliberately, specifically taken classes that impart these other ways of thinking, these other approaches, these other skills, then you can decide what seems to you to be the best intellectual approach to thinking about the problem. For example, if, let's say 10 years from now, you're at a corporation and the team you're working with is really upset about something, you want to know the history of the problem at that corporation. Well, you've learned how to engage in historical inquiry. What does it mean to look at a problem historically? Or if the problem is they're just not communicating very well, there's a communication breakdown. Well, you've learned some of the skills of oral communication. You can think about it that way, right? So our idea is to equip our students with these skills, these time-honored skills, so that they can become true problem solvers.
And Doug, that's a great word to attach to these is the skills is they're learning beyond just topics, but how to apply those skills in lots of different scenarios and later on for full-time employment.
Yes, exactly. Well said. And so now what we'd like to do is show you how to make sense of the chart and what it means in terms of our core curriculum. So just going a little bit deeper now. So remember a moment ago, I said that the philosophy behind our core system is that we want our students to learn to be seekers of what is true and creators of what is good. Well, if you look at the chart more closely, you'll see that across the top, we have our Flagler core values, which are citizenship, stewardship, community, and transformative learning. We think of these as 4 different ways to make the world a better place, essentially. We can make the world a better place through our citizenship. We can make the world a better place through our stewardship. We can make the world a better place through the communities we create. And we can make the world a better place by transforming ourselves and becoming richer, more well-rounded individuals in our own right. So that's across the top, 4 ways of making the good. Now, on the left, as I just mentioned, are 9 ways of seeking the true, right? Inquiring into the world. If you take those and put them together, you get the classical picture of what it means to be a flourishing, well-rounded, complete human being who seeks what is true and creates what is good. And if you can see where I'm going here, you can see how each one of those little catalog numbers, like core 132, core 154, is some combination of a creation of a good thing and an inquiry into a true thing. Combine them in some way. So you see how clever this is. Okay, now watch. Let's take, for example, core 132, right there in the middle. What that happens to be is a combination of seeking the truth through social science and creating the good through thoughtful stewardship. That's where it is on the chart, right there. So if you go to the Flagler College website and look at the classes being offered in the fall, and you type in core 132, this will be one of the examples of the class that you see, called Science of Crisis Mental Health Care in the US, in which we learn how to take care of each other through mental health, and we do it through for the method of inquiry of social science. So I'll just read this course description to you so you can get a bit more of the idea. This course explores the critical role of social sciences in understanding and addressing mental health crises, particularly in times of widespread societal stress. Students will examine how social scientific principles and methods contribute to crisis communication, preparedness, public awareness, and resilience building. Special emphasis will be placed on the evolving definitions of mental health and abnormality, the influence of social media on mental health perceptions and diagnoses, and the impact of sleep deprivation on the current mental health crisis. Through critical and creative thinking, students will analyze past and present public health challenges to develop strategies for improving mental health care in the US. So you can see this is really deeply taking the idea of learning how to think like a social scientist to address a real problem with real world consequences. So it's not just like taking sociology 101 or psychology 101, which would be social science classes in a distribution or cafeteria model. Instead, the professor here has developed a class that they're excited about, that they think has current relevance and that means something special to them right now at this point in our history. And students who find this interesting will gravitate to this. And so, the idea is you have a class of students and professor who are happy to be there and happy to work together on these issues. So it's exciting for everybody. Here's another one. Let's say core 151 over here on the left side of the chart. We can see core 151 is a combination of seeking the truth through creativity, like artistic truth, if you like, and then creating the good through citizenship. So a combination of artistic creativity and citizenship. Okay, so what might that look like? Well, again, if you go to the fall schedule and type in core 151, here's an example of what you'll see. Crafting democracy. And so what you should really picture here is the classroom of students kind of sitting around, perhaps not on the campus screen, literally making quilts together. I'm not making this up, making quilts together while the professor teaches them about how during the French Revolution, women would knit, what's the word? Sew secret messages into the quilts to pass on to other members of the French Revolution. Crafting democracy, here's the description. Because creating positive change in our world requires a sustained and collaborative effort on the part of the citizenry, those interested in progress must coordinate individual efforts and work together as a community. This creativity skill course within the Citizenship with Integrity value pathway emphasizes how citizens can be active political agents, even without holding office. Whether agents want to petition the government, amplify marginalized voices, or challenge existing ideologies, they must work together or coordinate efforts and apply creative solutions. The course Crafting Democracy focuses on how art, and craft in particular, has played a role in historical movements and how it continues to do so. This class will exemplify creative community by teaching and learning various craft skills and by using those skills to visually support the issues we care about. So again, you see here, we have the combination of artistic creativity with citizenship and integrity to create the theme of the course. And just one more. Let's look at core 172. Again, a combination of stewardship on the one hand and historical inquiry on the other. So thinking like an historian, thinking about stewarding the world. Type that into the fall schedule. Here's an example of what you might see. Hollywood and history, when the real becomes reals. The idea being that we keep our past alive, we keep it present to us, we steward the past through film as much as anything else, right? So here's the course description. Hollywood has tackled some of the world's most controversial topics, celebrated leaders, and events of apocalyptic proportions. This course will analyze movies that deal with historical events concerning race, genocide, war, peace, greed, exploration, love, intrigue, and the human spirit. We will determine what Hollywood got right and the impact on historical interpretation when they got it wrong. We will look at Hollywood's complicity in interpreting the historical narrative incorrectly and why. Perhaps more importantly, we'll discuss the historical events and individuals that Hollywood has overlooked, many times intentionally, and why. So when has Hollywood been an inadequate steward of the past? When has Hollywood been a good steward of the past? And how can we tell? Again, a combination of thinking like an historian and thinking about what it means to steward our community in a good way. Okay, so those are just some examples of what core classes look like and the reason they look the way that they do. Now, if you put all that together, here's what students are asked to do to complete our core curriculum. They're asked to take 9 classes, not like as many as the chart might make it seem, but just 9. You can see here, 1 from each of the rows, 1 for academic writing, 1 for oral communication, 1 for natural science, and so on. And they pick from the 4 columns across the top, just 1 for each of the 9 choices. There are nearly 200 classes to choose from. Each class is specially designed for the core by our faculty. And one thing I want to stress about this that I think is important to keep in mind is that, again, if you look around the country at the gen ed programs of colleges and universities, you'll find that on average, a gen ed program requires about, let's say, 45 credit hours, 40 to 45 credit hours. So something like 12 to 15 classes altogether, maybe 13 to 15 classes. This is just 9. This is actually a very quick and short gen ed program. The faculty decided to do it that way because they wanted to give students more room in their college schedule by the time they graduate for their majors, for their own choices, for their minors, for their electives. So we compressed our gen ed to make more room for the rest of your choices as a college student. Even though within that compressed gen ed, we are still also there too, giving you lots of choices, right? So even though we have put a lot of thought and there's a lot of deliberate intention behind this structure of 9 classes, within that structure, you have lots of freedom. And then once beyond it and the rest of your college education, you have lots more freedom. And just one further point about that, the way I've been wording this, it makes it sound like you have to complete these 9 courses before you do anything else. And that is not true. As Dr. Thweet can explain, we encourage students, very much encourage students to be taking classes in their majors right from the start. So all along, you're taking classes in your majors while you're taking these core required classes, right? And you do not have to finish the core classes any particular time. You don't have to finish them in your first year. You don't have to finish them in your second year. The only requirement is you finish them before you graduate. Dr. Thweet, anything to add about that?
Sure. A couple thoughts. So we do absolutely do our very best. And I will try not to get too diverted into this because we already had our advising webinar. So you should definitely check that out for further details. But we do our very best to take into account everything that we know about a student on their way in the door and craft a sort of initial schedule. We usually call it a schedule draft for that student on the basis of what we know about you. So what is your declared major? Did you tell us you were interested in a potential minor? What were your extracurricular activities? What else do we know about you? What did you tell us on the schedule survey that you answered for us? And so we do our very best to build like the best schedule draft possible. And then, we kind of release it to you and say, please look it over and tell us what you think and get in touch with your questions. And if you want to make changes, let's have a conversation about that. And I just want to emphasize that sure, we take great care in building those schedules, and we build them one by one, student by student. We build them by hand, but we don't know you very well yet, right? We are just at the start of our advising journey with you. And so you might take a look at your schedule and think, well, this doesn't sound terrible. I guess I could live with it, but we want you to be a little more excited than that. So when you do receive your schedule draft, and you get that email that says, here's how to get in touch with us, here's how to make an appointment, here's how to ask your questions and request your changes. Don't be shy about that. We want you to take a look at the core courses on your schedule and that first major course on your schedule and be excited about your schedule. So there are so many, many core courses to choose from that it's impossible to really give you an idea of the enormous variety of choices that you do have unless we get on the Zoom call together and I can pull up the schedule search and show you. Look at all of the different core 170, 1, 2, 3, and 4s there are, right? Or look at this whole other core literacy that isn't on your schedule right now, but that you would prefer. That's the way to really dial in that first semester schedule and make it what you want. I know it can be a little intimidating to make an appointment with a person you have not yet met, but please don't be intimidated by that. Go ahead, click that button, tell us what you would like, and let's see if we can get you a schedule that is a collaboration of an effort, and not just something that, you know, is our best effort and you just took it and you were like, okay, this will be fine. It probably will be fine, but I would like for you to feel some ownership over it, especially if you are a person with a particular creative interest. We have a lot of variety in that creative category in the core. There is visual arts, there is Flagler College Chorale. If you like to sing, you can get core curriculum credit for participating in the chorale. So let us know. Um, Dance, the mirror of society. Script to stage. If you want to write a script and then perform it at the end of the semester, you can do that. So theater, music, visual arts, all of it is there, and we can make that a part of your first semester experience. But we do want to hear that from you. I'm not going to put you in Dance the Mirror of Society on a whim. So you got to tell me that that's what you want. So just underscore that. Please do take our invitation to get in touch with us very seriously. I would love to have a conversation with every single student with the last names S through Z before you get to campus in the fall. And I know that my colleagues feel the same way about their advisees. The other thing I want to say at this point in the conversation about the core is that, yes, it's fantastic that we have really condensed it and made it this efficient but also creative and high variety kind of program. But it's also in its own right a way of exploring your interests. And one of the things that strikes me when I am talking with students about their schedules, both coming in the fall, and then again, when I work with students building their spring semester schedules, is the way in which they've figured out by spring that they can use the core to find more of what they're interested in. The core is an amazing way to explore new intellectual interests. When you land in college and you take a class that you have never taken a class in before, I mean, you discover that, oh, hey, I didn't know that this was interesting, but I'm like a little bit interested now. And you can take that little burgeoning interest and you can pursue it further in a variety of ways. More courses in that kind of general topic in the core, a different literacy, but maybe the same topic, right? So if you're interested in the environment, there are a variety of courses in the core that are themed around environmental stewardship and environmental ethics. You can explore that there. That might tip you off that maybe, even though you didn't plan on this, you might want to minor in coastal environmental science. You're not sure what you want to do with that quite yet, but you're interested. And you found that out because you took a certain course in the core. I see this happen a lot. And one of the things that this gives you as a student is a way of discovering a new interest and an interdisciplinary interest, something that along with the major that you already had your heart set on, well, like, oh, but I could do this other thing too. And because our core is efficient, you have time. You have time to double major, generally speaking, if you want. You have time to major in something and double minor in two different things. And you may not have any idea that that's in your future, but you might discover that through taking your core courses.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Tweed. That's terrific. That's a good discussion of how to make the core your own, how to really use it in a way that works for you and makes your experience with the Flagler education your own. That's very well said. So summing up our discussion of the core chart, we can see again the idea that this is meant as a picture of human flourishing, of becoming the best that we can be. That's really the philosophy, the theme, the meaning behind the Flagler core system. And now let's just take a step back a bit, okay? Because we've only this whole time been talking about one aspect of the core. Okay, that is, it's the most important aspect, if you like. It's the central aspect, those 9 core literacies, the 9 core classes we might be thinking about. But there is actually a slightly larger structure that has 2 more elements to it that we're really proud of and that are actually really important in their own right. I don't want to like forget them while we're talking about this. One of them is first year seminar, FYS, that happens right at the start of your college journey. And the other happens kind of halfway through your college journey as a kind of highlight of the core system called our flagship. And I just want to say a quick word about these. We'll have more to say about these in other venues, other times, but let's at least mention them now. So FYS, the first year seminar on liberal education and citizenship is the full title of the course, is a course that our first year students all take in their first semester. So it's the only class where you can be sure you'll be surrounded by nobody but other first year students. Everyone who's having the same sort of initial experience you're having. There won't be any sophomores in there, won't be any juniors in there, won't be any seniors in there. Just a bunch of other students settling into their dorms, having new experiences the way that you are. So what happens in first year seminar? Well, it's a 3 credit hour course. That means it counts just as much as any other course. It takes the fall semester, and here's what it does. It introduces the course, so it goes over some of the stuff we can go over in this conversation, but in a little bit more detail to help you, again, take ownership of and understand the education that you're here to receive. So, and it encourages you to think self-reflectively about that, just in the ways that Dr. Wheat was just describing, right? The message that she conveyed is the message that we sort of go into in first year seminar as well. How to make sure that you are doing the exploration, doing the self-reflection, doing the ownership of the education that you receive while you're here. What does it mean to pick a major? Does picking a major mean picking a career? Is there a one-to-one relationship there? Is it not quite that simple? How nervous should you be thinking about this major versus that major? How much money do chemists make, right? How much versus how much money do film studies majors make? We get a little bit blunt about that in talking to students about this, so they get a real sense of what they're getting into when they do this or that kind of path through their college education. In addition, we introduce students to St. Augustine. We go on walking tours. We go around and explore the area. We go to, for example, the Lincolnville Museum and Cultural Center. Some first-year seminars, because they're all a little bit different. Some go down to the cathedral. Some go walking around Lincolnville. Some go to the fort, right? The idea being to, as I mentioned at the outset, learn to explore the idea of truth and goodness amidst the beauty of St. Augustine. It's easier to engage in self-reflection, to engage in intellectual pursuits in a beautiful place. And look, here we are. We're in St. Augustine. Let's take advantage of that, right? Also, first year seminar is just a good example of a first college class. We do challenging readings, we do challenging writing assignments, but we do it with the assistance the professor provides to meet those challenges. Everyone who teaches a first year seminar volunteered to do it. They volunteered to do it because they really love working with new students and showing them what it means to really be in college and to both set a high bar, but also show them how to meet that bar. So the students learn the pride of accomplishing a difficult college task. That is, this never set so high it's out of reach, but is set high enough that it feels good when you can achieve it. As part of first year seminar, Flagler College has its own dedicated book. We work with Kendall Hunt Publishers to create each year a version of the first year seminar reader. What you see on the screen here is the cover of next year's first year seminar reader. Those little frogs are actually in the fountain outside the front door of Flagler College. So in our first year seminar reader, we have classic readings from ancient Egypt and Greece. We have modern readings from Toni Morrison and Mary Oliver, amongst many others, I should say. And we have readings about career and education. So readings about college and readings about the world that we engage in together, and then we do a bit of writing, a bit of thinking, a bit of talking about them. And we learn how to have those college conversations, because I know lots of students come feeling kind of shy, feeling like, oh, I don't want to speak up. What if I say the wrong thing? Well, one thing we try to show is that you don't need to worry about saying the wrong thing. What we want you to do is say the thing that is the result of your thought. We care about your thought before we care about the right or wrong answer, right? We care more that you engage intellectually, that you engage creatively, that you engage with your mind. We want to show you that that's what matters to us, right? That's what we're after in this first year seminar class. Okay, so that's first year seminar. Now there's flagship, which is at the other end, right? It happens in the second year of our core curriculum. You can think of it as a rite of passage course that occurs halfway through your college education, sort of right at the end of the sophomore year. And what flagship is, as you can see here in the text, a transformative educational experience that puts learning and interacting across communities of difference at its core. The program focuses on developing an inclusive academic community and building confidence in students' abilities to participate in a diverse democracy. Or to put it in a more exciting way, it involves things like traveling to India. There are some flagship classes that go to India. There are some flagship classes that go to Venice, as you can see here. There are some flagship classes that go to other places all around the world. There's also lots of flagship classes that stay right here in St. Augustine. Um, Dr. Thweet and I, for example, each have taught flagship courses that stay right here in St. Augustine, but that nevertheless explore different aspects of the human condition in new and exciting ways than what the students have been used to provide those new experiences that we can bring our intellectual skills that we've been learning to bear upon, to like see the real world application of the stuff, the intellectual skills we've been learning over the first 2 years in our core and then our major classes. So I kind of went quickly through the FYS and the flagship there. Dr. Thweet, do you have thoughts about those classes? I know you taught both of them.
Well, I already said my very
Mm,
favorite thing that I teach here at Flagler is first year seminar, and I've had a bit of a break from it for the last couple of years, and I'm really happy to be getting back into it this fall. Um, Flagship is is an intensive course, and I mean that in a technical way, everyone. I mean that the flagship courses take place within their own miniature semesters, mini terms that are about 2 weeks long. And so the courses themselves are the only things that you're taking during that 2 week period, and you're with your group of people, your classmates and your professor every day, doing something to do with the course. And most of the time you are outside of the classroom walls doing something experiential and hands-on, and that is true regardless of whether you find yourself in India or St. Augustine. It is by its very nature a very it, the word is intensive for a reason. It's an experience
Immersive.
that does
mhm.
um that does stand out to you. And I I took a break from teaching flagship intentionally because my last class was so amazing. I was like, I don't think I can do that again. Like, I don't think my heart can take it. So I needed a recovery period before I could jump back in and have
Yeah.
that kind of intensive teaching experience with students again.
So I think transformative, right, is another word we might use.
Indeed.
That one of
Is
our,
that what you said, Tara? I talked right over you.
No, I said immersive. And so
Yes.
whether you're local, you're going abroad, going to another area in the United States, like you're immersed in that topic for those 2 weeks
Yeah.
with your professor and your classmates.
But I think one of the transformative things about it, I mean, yes, all of the flagship courses, just like the rest of the core, are intentionally designed by a faculty person who's, ready to geek out about this thing. And that's wonderful, but it's actually about the kind of community that forms over the course of those 2 weeks and the kind of relationships that develop between the students, but also between the students and the faculty. That's really irreplicable, and it really does stick with you um, as a student and as a professor.
So we have about 10 more minutes for tonight. So I want to make sure that we get to all the topics that we wanted to cover tonight and then a few reminders for future sessions.
yeah, great. So I was actually going to pause right there, Tara. Where would you like to point us, do you think, for?
I think any kind of wrap up, I'm not seeing any questions coming through just yet. It's been
Okay,
really, this session tonight has really helped me understand a whole lot about it. And so I think because it's such a unique program that's to Flagler, it's always great for our families and students to kind of understand what that means to them and how they see themselves in these different pieces of it.
absolutely. So the Flagler core itself is part of the even broader notion, it takes part in the even broader notion of the first year experience, right? Where the first year experience is the intentional design of what a student can expect to find as they arrive on campus and what their first year, what they can expect it to be like. That we have programming across campus. We have programming in the dorms, we have programming in the classes, we have programming in the dining hall, right? That is meant to welcome students and show them what it means to be a student here at Flagler. And I think it's a good idea to say just a little bit about that. And as part of that, I guess we could say a word about our co-curricular program, which actually is part of the core, but is also kind of part of the welcome to Flagler College. And Dr. Thweet, you've done a lot of work with the co-curricular program. I wonder if you wouldn't mind saying a word about it.
So the basic idea of a co-curricular is a learning experience that happens outside the sort of technical set curriculum of the college. And so what we really mean are any kind of outside of the classroom events or learning experiences that the campus hosts. So things that are good examples of co-curriculars are any theater performances, the Common Read author talk for this coming year. Kyle Chaka is coming October 16th to speak specifically to our incoming first year students about their Common Read. That is a co-curricular, and so on and so forth. We ask that students do 20 co-curricular events as part of their graduation requirements across their entire time at Flagler. And that breaks down to between 2 and 3 events a semester. So we're not, we're not asking you to like commit, 3 nights a week out of your busy schedule to do this thing, but we do want you to intentionally cultivate um, a habit of looking around for learning experiences outside the sort of like classroom seat, right? We know that you are learning 100% of the time, just walking around the world. And we want to recognize that and also cultivate that as a campus and in our students.
So we have curated events, like let's say you're a history major, there could be a guest historian from Oxford coming here to give a lecture. Go attend that, right? We really want you to take advantage of the opportunity, and you get credit for doing so, this co-curricular credit, right? And that, like, multiply that by 1,000. That's what we're talking about when we say is co-curricular events around campus each year.
So one question, just because we've been talking about the first year seminar and the first year Read Common Read, how will students receive the book or opt in for
Yeah.
the book? What does that look like?
So this is the book. The book is Filter World by Kyle Chaka. That's going to be mailed to them. They should receive it the first couple weeks of July, I imagine, receive it in the mail. And in it, they're going to get a letter from me, in fact, that includes with it a quick little reading assignment to read the introduction of the book and to annotate it and to think about some questions that I asked the students about the first 10, 20 pages of the book. Then when you arrive on campus around August 5th, right around there, somewhere in there, it's August 23rd,
20 seconds move-in day. Yep.
22nd, just move-in day. Great. One of the first things we'll do after, well, you'll move in is the first thing and get to know campus a little bit. But then after a few days, you'll have your first academic session. The first year seminar class meets actually before the other classes do, just a little bit before. And so your first session will be with that first year seminar class. And what they will do, one of the things they'll do is talk about that assignment, talk about that bit of reading that you did from this Common Read book, Filter World by Kyle Chaka. Which you've had a couple months to read, so come on now. And then over the course of the semester in first year seminar class, one of the things that the classes will do is read through the book together. And the author's coming to campus on October 16th to talk about it with our first year seminar students and to answer questions and to offer insights about, what they were thinking when they wrote it, like what prompted them to write it. What do they think about it now they've written it? How does it feel to write a book? All that kind of stuff. Yeah,
So,
so
so
that's
do
the
they
common
have
read.
to have the book finished by the time they arrive for move-in?
No, they don't have to have the book finished.
Okay,
They're
good.
expected to have the introduction read, which is
Okay,
like the
all right.
first
So
10 to
make a
20 pages.
note. Can be a
Yes.
good family dinner
Yeah.
discussion before
Yeah.
move-in. This is to talk about the introduction for the
Now,
book.
don't get me wrong. You're by all means encouraged to read the book
That's,
before you
yeah,
but
if
Absolutely.
the introduction hooks you and you want to keep
right.
going, by all
Yeah,
means.
by all means.
But for family members, this is great gentle reminders or good talking points with students is, hey, how's that book doing? Let's
Yeah.
read together,
And
or talk
and
about it.
And speaking of that, I mean, one of the themes of Filter World is the way in which social media and internet have changed our culture. So a good thing to talk about with your family members, especially your older family members, is do they think that's right? Do they think culture has changed? Do the way we engage with television, the way we engage with art, the way we engage with movies, the way we engage with each other, have those things changed because of the way the internet and social media affect our relationships with each other and the way our relationships with the broader world? Um, so yeah, there's a lot to talk about, just ideas from that book with your family members.
Yeah. Well, thank you both so much for joining us tonight. We are at the end of our time. A couple different housekeeping. As Dr. Keaton mentioned, move-in day is August 22nd. So we know that that's a big thing. And that will be our kickoff for Welcome Week, where you will have different sessions to get to know more about the campus, including academic sessions with your first year seminar class, convocation, some other traditions that are a part of that first year experience. Next week's virtual session will be on getting involved on campus, which will include some of those co-curricular activities and programs and events that Dr. Threet mentioned. On July 7th, we're going to really look at just what studying abroad looks like. We heard so much feedback last year after hearing about Flagship, about hearing about the different opportunities for students, that our families wanted to hear more about study abroad specifically. So July 7th, we will chat with our Assistant Dean, Dr. Howell, to hear more about what the study abroad world looks like. And she'll most likely touch on just kind of some of those processes with Flagship for our sophomore students. But keep an eye out in the mail for the common read. That's going to be coming. What is the best way for our family members or students to get a hold of you if they have questions about core, FYS, or anything else that you've talked about tonight?
Let me do one more quick screen share and I will show you what is the best way to do that. Here you go. Here are some email addresses.
Perfect.
If you have questions for Dr. Thweet or your case advisor, please email case@flagler.edu. If you have questions about the course specifically, please email core@flagler.edu. And if you have questions about Flagship, please email flagship@flagler.edu. Although I should emphasize, your case advisor knows lots about all of this stuff, so it's always safe to email case@flagler.edu.
Absolutely. I always like to
Yes.
call them like they can always direct for where it needs to go.
Mhm.
Well, again, thank you both so much for joining us tonight. We appreciate all the families and students that have joined us tonight. Any general questions can always send to orientation@flagler.edu. Otherwise, we look forward to seeing you at another one of our sessions. So hope you all have a great start to the week. Thank you.